I'm Ranu,
I'm Duran.
and today we're going to talk about sensitive data in JavaScript files, or sometimes they're in JavaScript files, or sometimes they could be actually in a script in the source code. So today we're going to actually look over that, and talk about some of the common things or how common it may be for apps that we've seen in the wild or apps that we see on assessment. To start, we have our app.js application, and we're using Express.js, of course. And then same similar thing, we're going to call in HTTP. We're going to set our path required. So we're going to use path to set pretty much just to really set our CSS files, JavaScript files, and jQuery files as well. So this is where we're joining them and just making sure that they're accessible to the HTML application that we're going to be using, our HTML page. And here, this is just a static token. This would not be done normally, but I would not say that I have not seen this before. But this is just a static token to show a point, but normally they would not have a static token. So here we have our static token that we're going to call. And then we do a GET request here, request and response. We're going to take that token and pass it to the response headers and authorization barrier token.
So really quickly, you said normally you wouldn't have the static token.
Yep.
So what would you typically see instead?
Instead, they would call some type of SSO. So you would not see this here. Here, I'm actually doing it. Now, I have seen them use this in cases where they will store a static token, but it doesn't get used for anything, which is stupid. But normally people use SSO. So you wouldn't probably even see that here on this page. So, but right here, for example purposes or sample purposes, we're going to just use the static token just to give some demonstration. But we were normally, you would be better off using an SSO. So this is bad practice here.
I have seen, on a side note, I've actually seen someone use a static token where that token was kind of like a failsafe, and it was to allow any system that happened to have it connect, and it lasted forever. Now, typically you see that on the server side, and then the clients, the thing there being, well, if a client steals it, obviously your host, because it's typically hard coded in those cases.
Yep.
And that's, I mean, yeah, we know of a company that,
Yeah. I remember. I know exactly what you're talking about.
and I've seen that elsewhere too.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would not be surprised because I've seen people do it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. As Duran said, it may be and I would just call it maybe a backdoor to things. But
Yeah.
this is not a good practice. Use this SSO and make sure that you implement the SSO correctly. If you're using auth, make sure you use the right, whether you're going to use authorization code, or which code grant is probably a little bit better now than actually using explicit flow. But just for examples, we're going to go through and we're going to send this to our header, response header, and then we're going to also call our index.html. And then we're going to do another GET request here, but we'll save that for the next episode. But this is going to call a configuration.json file. And it's also look at this. We're calling it, we're going to log this now to run. In your opinion, why would this be bad? Because some people say this is not an issue. This is not a big deal because, I guess if you log it there in the user or an attacker was to get to the browser, it doesn't make a real big difference. It probably doesn't because they already have access to your machine by then.
Yeah, but that ignores the fact that the data inside of console isn't secure and it's not intended to be secure. When I talk about that, what I'm talking about is I can sit there and steal the data out of console.
Yep.
And I can do that more easily than I could do a lot of other attacks. So if I have anything that's sensitive in there, I may not have a cross-site request forgery attack that would let me call config on your behalf and see what all it says. But if it's in console, then I have that data, whatever was responded, whatever the response was, I have that information. It's if you want to do that when you're debugging, actually, I wouldn't even do it then.
Again, a lot of developers forget it.
Yes, but that's exactly right. A lot of developers forget their debugging code, especially on that front end side. Anything with any of your, be it React or what have you. But the other component is even if they don't forget it, it oftentimes just clutters everything up. If you need to know what the response is, why don't you throw up a proxy
Yep.
or use the network tab inside of Inspector?
They're too lazy. Let's move on to the index.html. Pretty simple. We're calling them our normal CSS, Bootstrap, jQuery, some more Bootstrap here, and we're also just simple navigation bar that you would see when you see the application. And in here, as you can see, we're calling config.json to script tags for JavaScript. And we also have this var global config equals access token. And here's our access token and preference for the route, like, English, whatever the person's using English or stuff like that. Yeah, US English. And console log, we're logging that to the console as well. So bad thing, bad practice. All this is a bad practice.
I will point out, since we're discussing it, there is a difference between the console log that goes, depending on the language you're using, console log that goes to the backend logs and the console log that goes to the client's console. And that can get confusing for developers where they think they're writing to backend logs, but instead, and I think this is one of the most interesting things about the push for JavaScript backends is developers get lost and they don't know what they're logging to.
Yep. Which is, like you said, best to use a proxy. I don't know why it's so hard for developers to use proxy. It's like they don't really understand what a proxy does. So it's like every time I say, "Hey, we'll use this, or we can use that, or you can use that," and it's like, "Well, we don't know what that is. Can't you just write? Like, don't you guys write proxy seasons?"
Well, okay, you're right. That's an interesting point. I think there are two sides to it. I think one side is developers typically aren't trained on that, and so they don't think about it. They don't think about it as a tool to help them. But the other component is a lot of these development shops have locked down development computers to the point where I'm not sure they could install something like that and get away with it. Not without jumping through hoops to get permission just to install it. And having been on a development team for a very long time, I do know it's a constant struggle. You'll have people who lock down developer workstations to the point where developers can't do their job. They can't compile the stuff they need to compile. They can't build it and test it on their own box. They have to go test it on a shared development box. But that's a terrible way to program.
So the application here, let's view the source code. It's pretty simple. And just like we've seen over in the code that we were reviewing, it actually stores the token, access token in JavaScript. Now, also there are other areas than, like, it doesn't have to just be on the source page. It actually can be in JavaScript file. Now, I've seen it where they call it in a JS file or a source map or JS map, something like that, and you'll see the token in there and maybe clobbered somewhere all into all of that, all of the code or source code there. But you'll definitely find it there. I don't know. It's countless of times I've seen tokens in there and they are active and still alive. And then it also could be, like Duran said, it could last forever depending on, and that's another issue. But here, this is just a simple, easy win, and it's something that you guys want to check and look for. This could be an easy finding to find and see if that token is actually active. You can send it in a request, an API request that's calling, a particular access token, authorization barrier token, and see if it actually allows you to send that request and get the same response or get something back. So you definitely want to check that.
So why would you consider this to be bad when we know the token gets stored in the browser's storage, be it cookie or memory or, heaven forbid, local storage or something like that? So why would we consider the access token being here visible within the script to be a bad thing? And this same question, of course, will explain why it's also bad to pump it to console. But why would we consider this a bad thing?
So I'll give it an example. To me, if say this was a login page, right? Or this actually doesn't even have, say it is a login page and I'm on the front page and the token is stored, and I've seen this in real, this is why I'm giving this demonstration. I don't even have to log in. That means that I don't have to be authenticated in order to use this token. If I have a API request, I can take this token, put it into my request, into the headers, and send that request, especially if it gives me sensitive data. And I don't even have to be authenticated here. As an attacker, as long as I have an idea or I'm able to get a valid request, I can use this. And as long as it's, depending on how long it's alive or time to live, then I can use it as long as it's doesn't expire. And for me, that's really bad because that allows an attacker to not have to be authenticated to be able to send valid requests or get request information back, which could be things like the user social security numbers or information, whatever it is, whatever they're sending, whatever sensitive API request, I don't have to be authenticated at all to get this token. And that's bad.
We can actually take a really nice example. Let's say you have an application that happens to have a shopping cart, right? So the user logs in, and as part of it, it has a page kind of like this where it returns that token embedded in the response. And that can be embedded in the body of the response, I should say. If that token is embedded in the body of the response, and I am an attacker, I have a malicious page, you go to my malicious page, and that page makes an AJAX call. So just an asynchronous JavaScript call to grab a page from this site that returns that token. Now the attacker has grabbed the token because it's right there in their face. If instead you pump to console, the attacker can still grab the data from, so let's say the token were not displayed here and the token were only in console, the attacker can still do something similar and then pull that token out of the console log data. So that's really the scenario we're talking about here, and that's where it can be damaging. In a shopping cart, that could be a big deal. Now I can sit there and stuff your shopping cart full of stuff that, maybe it's my company, and that's right. So that's one of the big things that we have to remember, as you said, Raniel, the situation for almost any vulnerability is always going to make a difference and always needs to be taken into account. And that's really what's going to drive where this sits and where each of these things sit. Another interesting scenario, though?
What?
Multi-user environment.
Oh, yeah. I figured you were going to come up with saying that.
See, that's the thing everyone forgets about, is if you were at a library, for example, if I were at the library and I was shopping on, again, a shopping site. That's exactly right. You're pumping this data to console, or you're embedding it in the page. In either case, it's going to be in the web cache if the page isn't set to not cache. So someone comes in after you log out and bam, they have it. Or so many other scenarios. It's a bad practice. It's a very bad practice.
What if a user installed an extension that was malicious, and the extension could grab it out of the console and it could do other things as well? People don't think about that as well. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen.
Really, to that point, remembering when we did, for example, the bank fraud one, imagine an attacker had created a malicious extension or something of that nature. As you recall, they didn't the Nigerians didn't authenticate with her phone. They authenticated with their phone. So the same
Yep.
situation applies here. They sniff it, they grab that token. Well, that, yes, you could say, well, this is terrible. They're already on your phone. You know, the house is on fire. So what does it matter? But the response is, yes, okay, that's true. The house is on fire, but they still don't have to do the actions on your device. They can do it from the comfort of their own home.
With that being said, I'm Raniel.
I'm Duran.
If you like this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know down in the comment section for more, episodes like this one. And until then,
Have fun.
have fun.